Quotations from myself, segment 72, quotation number 895. The traditional Marxist idea of communism, from each according to his abilities, to each according to his needs, is based ultimately on the premise that as soon as the productivity driven by technological progress creates such an abundance of goods and services that anybody could satisfy all his needs, the equality and happiness would ensue. Anyone familiar with human nature could have told Marx that this assumption is wrong. And the reason it is wrong is because the overwhelming majority of humanity cannot separate their ideas of needs from their notions of wants, and most of the time tend not only to equate them, but invariably let their notions of wants to determine their needs. Now, if one takes into account the insatiable inventiveness humans possess in continually multiplying and magnifying their wants, it is perfectly clear where all this leads to. As the 20th century is the most productive in history, has shown, as far as human desires are concerned, the sky is literally the limit. Judging by the past, 200-room palaces for a family of 3, private yachts as big as ships, personal jets, etc. My knowledge in the area of Caspian consumption, I must confess, is rather limited. It is obvious that there will always be people who make extraordinary and extravagant demands on societal resources. It is not hard to imagine that in the near future some people might even consider having personal intergalactic spaceship or spending a couple of months of each year vacationing on Mars as their inalienable rights. And what is more, many more will demand the same thing as absolutely essential to their happiness. Like chasing one's own tail, there is no end to it. It is also abundantly clear that the satisfaction of such outrageous desires of even a few will, as it always did, deprive the many of even the basic necessity of life. So it is not the utmost development of productive forces, but the collective determinations of the majority to achieve the equality here and now, at whatever level of productivity and consumption possible at the time, that will bring happiness and peace into the world. And until those who dream about communism will significantly lower their expectations and realize that in our imperfect world it is only possible if everyone gets a little bit more than those at the bottom rather than as much as those at the top, and redirect their effort accordingly. Communism would remain just that, an impossible dream. But if one finds such philosophical musings too abstract and unconvincing, then let facts speak for themselves. Not a single country, from the huge Soviet Union to the tiny Cuba, which has embraced socialism, the so-called preliminary stage in the road to communism, another way to avoid full equality here and now, was ever even close to level of productivity Marx saw as a necessary precondition for it. On the contrary, the countries which were the first to implement socialism were all on the brink of economical and social collapse, and had welcomed it as the best possible under the circumstances system to distribute their meager resources more equitably to save their population from starvation and death. Even the developed, ultra-conservative capitalist country like the United States had to adopt some socialist measures during the Great Depression to save themselves from disaster. On the other hand, as soon as the economic situation improved, due to increased productivity, the socialist idea had become less and less popular. Again, to explain that, we have simply to observe the behavior of a single individual. The one who is poor will eagerly take advantage of equal redistribution of wealth, for he has nothing to lose and everything to gain from it. But as the same person gradually gets better off, to the same degree his attitude and opinions about the desirability of equalization diminishes, until when he reaches the point that it is his wealth that has to be redistributed to those who have less, he becomes a staunchest opponent of such unjust measure. The society as a whole does not behave any differently. In the rich country of Western Europe, in USA and Canada, etc., where the majority of population are relatively well off, it is only the poorest who will benefit and consequently will support material equalization. But since they are in the minority, this country under the present condition will never welcome even socialism, never mind communism. The fact is that despite the occasional fits of generosity, mostly forced, unnatural, and therefore short-lived, those countries remain essentially conservative as far as redistribution of wealth is concerned, and consistently vote largely conservative governments, albeit under different disguises, into power, which is a clear manifestation that the comfortable majority, the so-called middle class, does not really want to share their wealth, with the less fortunate. And if by a fluke of election roulette, the ever so slightly left-leaning government comes to power and forces them to do so, it engenders a growing resentment, and giving the first opportunity will be voted out of office by this majority. As depressingly regrettable as it may sound, it is only when, first, the majority of the population is poor, and two, if this poor acquire by whatever means power, that the ideas of equality and communism have any chance, but never certainty of implementation. Postscriptum. Today is June 8, 1995. I just finished typing the foregoing at 10 o'clock in the morning. It is 10 o'clock in the evening now. It just had been announced on the radio that in the largest province of Canada, Ontario, the pseudo-socialist New Democratic Party, after being in power by pure accident for 5 years, has been defeated, and the most extreme rightist government in the recent history of Canada, in my memory at least, has been elected by promising to cut the welfare benefits and force their recipients to work for them. The great Ontario middle class joined the great American, Italian, French, etc. middle classes have spoken. And the message is loud and clear. We don't want to share any more with the poor. And if you ask us what will happen to them, the answer is, we don't give a damn. Welcome to the end of the millennium. 896. I don't believe that this passion is capable in any field of human activity, from art to science, of anything other than mediocrity, perpetuation, and stagnation. The true creativity must have, in order to move, the passion as a fuel, though just by itself it will take it nowhere, not only in science but in art as well, without thoughts and reason as the driver. 897. Women, especially those who find me attractive, always make me feel guilty for paying more attention to my books than to their looks. It is as if they are trying to tell me that my priorities are all wrong and unnatural, and the only reason male and female created them is for a man and a woman to be totally preoccupied with each other, and anyone who isn't giving it fullest attention must be against nature itself. Of course, most of women, the compassionate creatures as they are, don't mind men other pursuits, of which there is a great variety, from the purely intellectual to simply physical, men invented and enjoyed, but only as long as men remember that this must be secondary to the sexual ones. Perhaps because women feel much more responsible personally than men for continuation of life, which is involved reproduction, which in its turn is inseparable from sex, that they see it as the most important function of a human being, with everything else as complementary and subservient, and at the end leading to it. In the light of this, it is clear why women feel that whatever men do must be done ultimately to win women's favor and love. In addition, while the majority of men, sex begins and ends with sexual intercourse, which by itself takes relatively little time, thus freeing men to do other things. For women, it's only a small part of the large as life itself story, filled with dreams, fantasies, flirtation, courtship, romance, etc., etc., etc. That's why women are so infatuated with poets, singers, and artists who devoted so much of their life and work to celebration of love, and consequently demand from men in their lives to follow the example. Their constant message to men, to paraphrase Mr. Clinton, is, "It is love, stupid." Now, coming back to myself, I have to confess that as a card-carrying member of male fraternity, sufficiently fortified by testosterone, I fully appreciate female beauty. But what I am increasingly unwilling to do is to worship it as the only God, or even the chief one. Life is too short to be devoted to a single pursuit.